Welcome all to number 3 of our live stream tied to Circular City, Circular Economy Club. My name is Mike Boyle, and I have Jana Röhle with me today. Thank you very much again, Jana, for joining. And without further ado, now that I've already gone ahead and ruined the flow, let's move on to our panelists. Perhaps, Jana, if you can go ahead and describe to us who we have in store for our live stream today.
Sure thing, Mike. So I have the honor to introduce our guest to you. With us today are Jiwei Zhou, a designer and PhD researcher at Materials Experience Lab at Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands. We have Prashant Lingam, co-founder at Bamboo House India. He's also a social entrepreneur, and currently he's with the United Nations Development Program in India. Third, we have Serena Camere. She's an industrial designer and the head of products at Mogu in Italy. And last but not least, Jan Wurm. He's a professor, architect, designer, innovator, and also a director at Arab in Germany. Back to you, Mike.
Excellent. Then thank you very much for that, Jana. And so I would say, without further ado, if I can go ahead and bring Jiwei to the stage. Jiwei, there you are. Thank you very much. Thanks again for joining today. Subject being biomaterials. And of course, I did a little bit of research on what you're up to, and you have a very special relationship to this subject. And one of the elements that you talk about in your various artifacts to be found on the web is this idea of biodesign. Perhaps if you can describe to us what is biodesign and how do you actually go ahead and approach the subject?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mike, for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here. Actually, biodesign is basically when designers consider living materials and materials from living organism as something to work with, to build something, build an artifact out of it. Actually, biodesign has evolved a bit from the beginning to now. And also a lot of practitioners and researchers are focusing on it from their own perspectives. There are materials from the biosphere, which are bio-based materials. There are also materials that are growing, like mycelium and plant roots, fungus, bacteria. Yeah, actually, that's the pure mycelium filaments. Very beautiful.
You see, it's bleeding into my shirt. That shows that it's truly bio-based. Isn't that cool? Sorry, yeah, I interrupted your flow, Jiwei. Apologies for that.
Yeah, pigments are very important elements in many biodesigners' work. Release pigment, and yeah, some designers use it as dye, natural dye for textile, for example. And then later, there are also other branches of biodesign when designers want to keep the materials alive and still in the use time by not stop their living to say this is a dead material, but they're still responsive in the use time. That's also part of biodesign. Yeah, and
what
also
actually,
probably something to add. Yeah, sorry.
That's right.
They're also like biofabrication and together with digital fabrication. So they are combined together to have more responsive behavior and special structure, material structure. Yeah, so that's basically digital biofabrication. That's also part of biodesign. And probably there are more. I think, yeah, other people can also add on.
You covered a very large gamut there, Jiwei, and appreciate that. And it shows how encompassing the subject actually is. And I'd be very curious to find out from your perspective. So how did this journey actually start for you? How did you obtain interest in the subject? And what was the turning point for you of actually going ahead and making the deep dive into biomaterials?
Oh, very, very nice question. Actually, when I was doing my bachelor study, I developed this interest in bio-based material from tea waste. It's a waste stream, and I want to make use of that because otherwise it becomes wasted, and maybe there are values from it to make a design object. And then later on, I came to the Netherlands. I got to know that actually here people are designing with mycelium, which is very interesting for me. Which was very interesting for me. Then I went to Mediamatic to do an internship designing with edible fungus. That's also a kind of mycelium, but at the same time edible. And there I explored and experimented with how to create tableware from that fungus. And also like during that process, I realized the material, of course, is interesting, but at the same time, I wanted to add this level or layer of interaction or people's experience with it, like how people experience this material. And maybe it's the design is not only limited to an object, but also it's a process when people started to interact with it. So, and in that project, we looked at how people, so through the form and the process of eating with the tableware, how people got really intrigued and curious by the fungus, which can be also made as a table, which can be eaten. And that was really interesting. And then later on, I had this chance to collaborate with Diana Scherer with her amazing work of weaving textile with plant roots. And also, I got to know this material-driven design method, actually promoted by Elvin Carano, my professor at the university. So I started to use this method for creating a more daily material from plant root, which is originally very fragile and delicate textile material. And through this journey, I started to learn how people react to the material, how they play with this material in their hand, how they are surprised by the material, and also like from a technical perspective, how the material can have the technical uniqueness and also limitation. So combining all these different angles, I designed or explored this material and found this unique property of how digital fabrication can add on to the stability of the plant root textile, and they together form a kind of hybrid object. And after that, I thought, why do we have always to kill these materials after we make an object? So now my interest is mainly on how to keep them alive and also have this responsive relationship and symbiotic relationship with them in the use time in people's daily life.
And in fact, the last statement that you made was very poignant in the idea of trying to ensure that we try to prolong the life of the materials that we're working with, and ensuring that we optimize our resources, and then eventually to ensure that we perform some sort of circularity in making sure that we optimize it even to the last leg of the life cycle. Jiwei, perhaps if thank you very much. I think there was a lot of information. I'd like to go ahead and make sure that all of you have more access to this data. So we'll ensure that following this live stream that we will provide you with some links so that you can go ahead and perform much more of a deep dive. Jiwei, if you can just hang around, I'm going to go ahead and send you to our VIP room. And then at the end of our interviews, we'll bring you back out for a panel discussion. That would be great. So thank you very much. I will go ahead and move the stage on to Yana, who will be interviewing Prashant, and I will say goodbye.
Yeah, thank you, Mike, for that. And hi, Prashant. So happy to be here with you today.
Thanks for the invite. Happy to meet you.
Of course. So your story is very unique. You build a business solely using bamboo trees. Maybe you could explain to the audience a little bit more about what got you started on your quest. on this
Okay,
journey?
so bamboo was by chance. It was not a planned journey. We just wanted a furniture for house, and we fell in love with the material. And when we started going deeper into the subject, we understood the possibilities of this wonder grass. So that's where we started, and we decided to focus on the shelter solutions. If this biomaterial can be used to address shelter solutions. That's where the whole journey started. So this is almost the 15th years. This is the 15th year we have been working in bamboo.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And on your website, you also talk about the beauty of bamboo. Do you think you could elaborate on those talking points a little bit more?
Yes. So India, of course, when I specifically come down to our Indian context, India is the second largest producer of bamboo in the world after China. So that is one. So we have very vast resources spread across our country, and as you know, communities at the forest level depend on bamboo for their livelihoods, and it's such a versatile materials, starting from a toothpick to a house. There are more than 1,500 documented uses of bamboo. It's extremely vast. So you name the application, there is a possibility of making with this material. So it has extreme versatility, and there's more than 5 million livelihoods. There's a chance of being dependent on bamboo in our country. So it's extremely wonderful. Yes, at the same time, it's extremely challenging to work with bamboo because it traps both moisture and air together between the internodes. That is the first challenge in terms of technicality. Second, it is circular. It is round. So it's that is second. It's very laborious. It is not speedy, and still we don't have. And it's mostly handwork. At least in India, even today, it's most of handwork. So these are certain challenges, but applications are extremely unique. So that's the beauty. The difficulty itself is the beauty in it.
Yeah, I understand. And you already talked a little bit about bamboo as housing material. Could you describe to us what a
Yeah. So
bamboo prefabricated housing is all about?
yes. So can I share screen? We would like to show something. Do I have the facility to
Sure.
share the screen? Yeah.
I don't know,
So
Mike. I think so, right?
yeah, because I see share screen here. So I'll just try to
You
share the
give it a
screen.
try, Prashant.
Yeah.
You
So I'll just.
feel empowered.
Feel empowered, yeah.
So is my screen visible?
I cannot see it.
Is it
Can you try
visible?
again, maybe?
No.
Oh,
Is my desktop visible? No.
no, not yet.
No, afraid not. So apologize for that, Prashant, but looks like we're not able to go ahead and facilitate that functionality. Sorry for that.
Too bad. Well, maybe we can get back to that later.
Okay.
Well,
So it's okay. So yeah, so I'll just share a little bit about the prefab housing we are working on. So we use engineered bamboo boards. All the walling, flooring, roofing, all the raw and natural bamboo is converted into a plank. It's a kind of a board or a sheet or a plank. That's how it's converted. So and all the elements are in a kind of a knockdown format. So we call it house in a box. So the entire house can be shifted whenever we want, removed, re-erected, because that's how the format of the house is. I would have shown, but anyway, we're not able to share the screen. And it's very laborious. So for every house of around 250 square feet house we build with bamboo, around 125 people are employed for a day. So it's a huge back end work. It's a huge back end work, and bamboo being a grass, so as we all know, bamboo grows 1 meter every day on an average. So some of the species grow up to 1 meter. So this is the format, and we take around 3 to 4 days on an average to construct one house of around 250 square feet. So the format is a prefab. So it's very fast. It's around 3 to 4 days we complete one house.
that's
So maybe
amazing.
things would have been easier if we would have done share, but people around people who are listening have to visualize. I don't know whether I'm able to communicate it properly or not, but they will have to visualize. Or maybe once we are done with the conversation, they can log on to our website and check what exactly is the prefab format of bamboo construction.
Oh, for sure. And you can even share the
Yeah.
links later on.
Yes, if I can share.
You also talked about bamboo housing, not only creating livelihoods, but also creating, I think it was 516.33 million days of work. So what kind of work is being created, and what kind of an effect do you think does it have on a community?
Okay, we work at the backend community mostly with the tribals in Northeast India. Mostly they are forest dependent communities. So as you know, the first step involves the farmer planting the bamboo. Then after 3 or 4th year, we look at the mature bamboo. Then the next step is the second community goes to forest. They cut the bamboo, and it's very laborious to cut a bamboo, because at least the places where we work, it's everything. There is nothing mechanized; it's manual. So it's a manual cutting, and the terrains are very high in forest areas. They have to bring all the bamboo, at times even manually on their shoulders. They have to bring all the 20, 30, 40 feet heavy bamboo to the bottom, to the ground level. From there, again, it has to ship. So it's extremely laborious. It's extremely challenging. The terrains are challenging. So then it comes to the ground level. Then women members are involved in our working area where we work. So women members do the secondary job where the slivering, slicing, cutting, and the weaving is involved. Then there is a third step of mechanization. Then it comes to us to the city. So it's like extremely laborious. A lot of livelihoods are impacted. So that is why it's like, for us, it's one of the most beautiful material, apart from supporting livelihoods and environment. And we can harvest it every 3rd and 4th year, or maximum 5th year, to the entire life cycle of around 48 years. So every 3rd, 4th years, we keep cutting. So it has multiple ripple effects.
It's awesome. So it sounds very inspiring to me. So looking back on your journey, this is my last question to you. Looking back on your journey, all the failures you might have had and all the successes you achieved, what's the most important lesson you would like to share with people there watching right now?
So my journey in biomaterials has been extremely challenging, because in a country like India, the acceptance of these materials are very, it's very less. Basically, people have more inclinations towards your factory made products, so there's not much of a. So we got our first break almost after 7 years of we starting our enterprise. So till 7 years, there were no takers. So nobody wanted bamboo house from us. So one thing what we understood is patience holds the key. So one needs to have the patience to get some break into this field in which we are working in our country. That is one. So one is the vision that things will work out, over a period of time. So it's not going to work out over a night or something. That is second, what I have learned. Acceptance, yes, it will come, but at quite a late stage. So we need to keep working in this area if we need to see results. So these are the 3 lessons which I have learned in my journey.
Thank you so much, Thank you so much, Prashant. I'm going to give it back to Mike in the next interview.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much, Jana. Thank you, Prashant. So let's go ahead and move on to Serena. Greetings again, Serena. Thanks again for joining us today. And
thanks, Mike.
Very, very interesting looking at performing research, getting ready for our program today. And there's one phrase that you use that I have to ask you this question. What is radical by nature?
Thanks very much for the question. We are very attached to that, actually, to that sentence. So in general, Mogu, what we see is that our mission is really to bring nature back into everyday's life. And what we do at Mogu is actually to partner with nature, because we employ living organism mycelium to create products for interior design. So in general, radical by nature is that it came because we were analyzing ourselves and of course defining our own identity and the brand identity of Mogu. And we understood that it would make really different Mogu and mycelium technology from other technologies, and especially related to biomaterials, is that they are really, mycelium materials are really radically different from any type of other materials that you that natural materials that humanity in general has worked with. So they have been discovered like something like 10 to 15 years ago. But since then, we really understood that it is actually a technology that is able to create a range of different materials and different possibilities. And all these different materials, they actually behave as something we have never seen before. So they don't work as, you know, paper or cellulose-based materials or wood-based materials. They are a little bit of similar. They have properties that are similar to a little bit of these different materials, but they have this uniqueness that is really radically different. And besides, we also like the pun that radical. It also means it sort of means root-based, which is, and in general, mycelium can be seen as the root structure of fungi, actually. So that is more or less why we chose it as our own brand statement, let's say.
Well, I could only agree with you. We should never forget that we should bop till we drop. So that the whole idea of radicalism certainly falls in line with what I think is trying to make the most out of what we're doing. I thought it was quite interesting going through your website and understanding that your focus has been on tiling for walls and floors. And I have to ask you this question because you have this white background. So are the tiles in the back behind you, are they made out of mycelium?
No, so this is actually just a cabinet from
okay.
standard cabinet, but there is a mycelium hexagon. So you can see I'm actually on smart working because of course of the time, but I have it in my home because I really like to have one product of ours.
Well, of course, I can't imagine that you would allow yourself not to practice what you preach. So I couldn't hold myself back in asking you that question. There's a lot of interesting things that you talk about with regards to your approach. And of course, the idea of working with nature, because in fact, nature is not something separate. It's part of us. We are part of nature. We tend to forget that. And I thought there was a very interesting part of what you've been doing that Jiwei actually talked about in the beginning with our interview, and this whole idea of biofabrication, that you actually have a laboratory, if I got it right. Maybe if you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we do not only have a laboratory, actually. We have a 1,200 square meter factory plant right now.
Wow.
So in general, let's say, yes, we see that the main point for us is really employing mycelium. And when I mean employ, is that basically we are employers of a living organism. And it is really one of our main workers, our main collaborators is really like and it is a challenge to work with this living organism because sometimes they really seems to have an agency of their own, and to a certain extent they have. So in a way we are collaborating with living organisms, and we try, but our goal is really to try to sort of standardize the process and really scale it up in order to really being able to produce products that can be replicated and that can correspond to standard features and be really real products in the sense, in our case, it is mainly related to finishing materials for architecture because that's where we found the best value proposition for mycelium technology and the best business case also to prove the potential of this technology. But we are also exploring other possibilities actually. So at Mogu, what we do is basically two-sided. On the one hand, we are a very product-driven company, so also collaborating with Arup and other companies in order to create beautiful products for everyday use. But on the other hand, we have also a very strong R&D core, and we do a lot of research and innovation. And in this case, for example, we are lucky we have a lot of projects funded by the European Union, and we work our competence center is actually called Pura, and you can check it on the website. It is very interesting because they are developing innovation and visions on new possibilities for mycelium technologies and biomaterials. So, for example, how these materials can be applied in space, in the leather industry, in the food industry, and in general, like visions of the futures.
Yeah, again, thank you for that as well. It's important to make sure that we establish some sort of awareness with regards to the subject. My personal take is that biomaterials is one of those subjects, if we're looking at from a life cycle, you referred to scalability, that although this is the most natural thing in the world, and this is how we originally built going back in the ages, it's still considered to be terra incognita. We're still in the, I get the impression, the developing parts. So the question I would have for you is, how do you go ahead and address the challenge of people understanding a concept that should be quite natural, biomaterials, and overcoming, of course, maybe some of the hurdles we have technically, as you alluded to in the mycelium, and how do we go ahead and bring that to the next level, which would be the scalability? Actually, 3 questions, so I think that will probably be it for me right now. Please.
Yeah. So yeah, that is exactly the challenge, because in the end, you know, biomaterials for us, it is even double folded, in the sense that it is not only biomaterial, so a new material that is circular, that of course it seems to have a lot of value proposition, but people are certainly definitely have problems sometimes accepting it. Well, it is changing in the last few years. I saw that a lot of, actually, there is a lot of sensitivity towards circularity and sustainability, a lot of higher, you know, sensitivity. So it is a matter of, you know, increasing the cultural awareness to these biomaterials. For us, the challenge is even stronger, because actually accepting a material that is made from a living organism, fungi, which is not 100% perceived as a positive thing. So you have to really make a cultural effort in order to communicate that these materials are sporeless, totally harmless, and they are actually fascinating. They have a positive, you know, contribution to the environment. So I believe it is really a matter of communication and presenting and doing, you know, sort of a really cultural work to make this material accepted. And beside that, it will mainly come, I think the main problem in general is that, you know, people tend to like perfect things, you know, perfected things. And there is no, in our, you know, modernity, there is a sort of, we lack an understanding of what imperfection and beauty and, you know, errors and a little of uncertainty can bring. And actually, it's funny enough that these pandemic explosions, I think it's really making us tackle this issue of certainty and how we see, you know, things really packed. But we should deal a little bit more with a natural, with nature, and in general, try to understand a little bit more from nature what we can plan and what we can live to the uncertain, let's say, and have a little bit more imperfect houses and you know, a little bit find the beauty of imperfection in general.
Man, you nailed it. Perfection is an illusion. You and I know that, and many of the people who are watching today know that. But we're afraid to show our vulnerability, and I think that you alluded to COVID-19, and I think that's a great example of how we have to understand our vulnerability as human beings, and understanding how we live with nature. And actually, there are things that are taking place that go beyond our concept of efficiency, and that we keep striving for efficiency, whereas our goal should be effectiveness. And so I really appreciate what you had to say about that one, Serena. Perhaps if I can go ahead and open the door to our VIP room and backstage, and if I can bring you back out when we're finished with our interviews for a general panel discussion, that would be fantastic. I really appreciate it. Okay, wonderful. All right, thank you very much, Serena. I will go ahead and bring Jana back. And for closing, start with Jan. Jana, it's over to you.
Hey, Jan, nice to have you here today.
Morning, Jana. Yeah, great to be here.
Hope you're fine. You have a very impressive life career, Jan. I have to say that. What motivated you to follow the path you are on today?
Well, I guess I was I was growing up in a forest where, you know, I started to build houses in the woods, collecting materials, and got fascinated by by making things, I think, and that brought me to make an apprenticeship at the joiner, where I worked with fantastic craftsmen making beautiful objects out of timber, and having that care for the material and the softness and tenderness, how they treat the material. I think that was quite an important understanding of the relationship between natural material and the craftsman. So when I studied architecture, I think that stayed with me, that fascination of materials and how materials themselves influence design. So not the other way around, that we have an abstract idea of something and then we look for the right material, but the other way around. And I think that stayed with me as a designer. And being now in the domain and working for big design and consultancy, there are big challenges in our industry when we talk about decarbonization and the wastefulness of how we make buildings. And definitely there is the big need for change. And I think rediscovering these materials and the natural material palette and how we can build wasteless is still a fascination to me.
Mm-hmm. Beautifully said. Very beautifully said. So you actually already said, but I want to ask again, what came first, the architect in you or the appreciation of biomaterials?
I think it's the materials. Yeah, I think it's how materials enable you to do things, understanding them, working with the materials.
Yeah.
And it's the case for all materials. There is something you understand about what materials are and how they come from, what impact they have, who is involved in the chain of making materials. So it's not just the material; it's also the people involved in that value chain. And I think that's also a great aspect of working with Mogu and Serena, just getting into a different part of the industry and getting to know the people with all their passion and knowledge. So it's always about the people that are part of the material cycle, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And you already mentioned you're collaborating with Mogu. So can you tell the audience a little bit more about that collaboration, what it's about?
Yeah, I think Jana, you mentioned I think in the talk we had before we went live on the Mushroom Tower in New York. That was designed by David Benjamin, where we as Arabs supported on the engineering side of making this stacked tower, stand up. It's a tower made of mushroom bricks. And it was an installation. I think for the first time, this material became into the bigger awareness of designers and architects, and also started a fascination with me. And we've been exploring with bio-based materials for quite some time. I was involved in a project called BioBuild, where together with GXN architects and others, we looked in replacing technical fibers, glass fibers, and oil-based resins with natural-based products. So we looked at flux fibers and jute fibers and natural resins in making facades and panels. And we substituted technical materials with these materials, and it makes sense because you reduce the embodied footprint and the embodied carbon. But still, at the end of the life cycle, you have a component which you can't really recycle and you can't really compost because of the technical process involved. So I was interested to look beyond that and understand truly what potential there is in the bioeconomy, which is something new for the construction field, I think. And there are a lot of advancements in the last years in that field. And I think we in the industry or from construction, we can benefit and learn from bioeconomy to make that work for us. And mycelium probably is the one most advanced and tangible opportunities we have.
Mm-hmm. The Mushroom Brick Tower is actually the project that got me involved and inspired in biomaterials.
Here we go.
Yes,
yeah.
This was the first project that really caught my heart. So yeah, it's amazing. I'm really inspired by this. So you mentioned the bioeconomy. What are your thoughts on bioeconomy, and do you see it being something, let's say, separate from the circular economy, or is this a subset due to the cluster aspect of the concept?
Yeah, I think, well, the bioeconomy is really the green motor of the circular economy. It's really a complete integral part of it because of the natural cycles being cycles. But I think the potential is to work across the sectors. So we have a food industry, we have we grow crops, and we have some agricultural waste, and we compost some of it, but then we grow timber as a building material. But I think we really need to work more integral between those sectors and understand, for example, the agricultural waste, the food waste, and how we can use it as a feedstock to make materials. And within the bigger bioeconomy, construction, is a relatively large volume of materials of relatively large value. So I think it can play quite a central role to the bioeconomy to use some of the waste streams, feedstock to produce higher value materials. And a lot of our materials have a lifetime maybe of 5 or 10 years when we look at the interior fit out. It's quite a lot of waste we generate, but we can perfectly use bio-based materials for all these architectural finishes, and make materials from waste, which is mycelium you can cultivate on agricultural waste streams to bring it back into a higher value use for architecture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, system changes for a more sustainable world. That would be amazing. And in spite of biomaterials being around for ages, for example, if we look at mud huts or something like that, I recognized in the past months that while I was getting into this topic, that many people are, let's say, oblivious of the subject. So most of them have no clue. And here's a two-pronged question I want to ask. Is it just my perception, and what do we need to make biomaterials a game changer within the construction industry and buildings, for example?
So say again, what's the question? Sorry.
It's all good. The question was that since we have biomaterials being around for a long time, or since a long time, that many people still have no clue of it. So they are oblivious to the topic. And I recognize a lot of distance, let's say it like that. And I wanted to know if it's just maybe my personal perception, and if not, what do we need to make biomaterials a game changer?
It's a great question. I think Serena alluded already a bit to it, that we have certain associations for biomaterials, especially when they are made by microorganisms, which we can't see, which we feel threatened by, because basically we share the same habitat, right? We are organisms looking for the right place for us, and it's always been a wild place, nature. But I mean, we took control as a species, but we still feel, of course, feel threatened. And the corona outbreak, I think, shows that. But it also shows that it's us that set the base for by reducing and destroying habitats. And I think maybe through this crisis we're in, we also realize how much our own well-being depends on the well-being of other life on this planet. So maybe by more taking an ecosystem approach, so going away from the material itself, but really understanding where that material is coming from and part of the ecosystem that we are all in as life on this planet, that could be the game changer of really seeing us part of it and not as a separate part of nature and the ecosystems that support our life on this earth. And if we can get that together again, if we think about more cohabitation than us and them, I think that could really define a new mindset. Maybe that's a little bit philosophical, but on the other side, I'm really completely excited what's happening with the approach of new paradigms that come out of a niche. and get into the open conversations like regenerative design. So, for the last years, we've been discussing sustainability as, reducing footprint and making things better. But we now discuss how buildings can contribute to the health of our ecosystems rather than just, having less negative impact. I think that positive framing is a fantastic outlook of what we can contribute to rather than being on the side of defining efficiency things. And I think it's possible. We in biomaterials play a complete crucial role to that approach of regenerative design. So the bottom line is, just adopting a more ecosystem thinking, an ecosystem approach would probably change a lot the way we see and design.
Yes, for sure. We're all connected on this planet, and I think how great it could be to actually not set a block of cement in the landscape, but to actually create a building that's an environment in itself. And with that, I'm going to give it back to Mike. Thank you so much, Jan, again.
Sure, thank you. And in fact, what I will do is bring everybody back. Unfortunately, we've lost Prashant. Hopefully he will come back. Just maybe highlight some of the statements that were made. This came from Stefan Peters. I was very inspired, Jan, by that of what you had to say. Another comment coming from Hart Kimberly, living habitats, great stuff. So I encourage all of you to go ahead and add some questions to the chat box. For those that perhaps just kind of stumbled across this live stream right now, we are talking about biomaterials, and it's been great conversation so far. And I have a question maybe to go ahead and get our discussions flowing here. Within the circular economy, we talk about different lives with different cycles. We have a technical cycle where we've been concentrating primarily on recycling, and now we're starting to realize that maybe recycling was not the best solution here. And then we have, of course, our biological cycles, which I believe that's primarily what we've been talking about. Now, a question to you, and I leave that open to anyone within the panel. Any ideas of how we can better expedite this switch from the technical over to the biological? Because if indeed we're trying to make an impact, which we need to do, we need to move more elements into the biological. Anybody care to take a stab at that one? Not all at once?
Maybe I can start.
Jiwei, thank you.
I'm quite into recently. So my current research is about how to perpetuate living materials in the use time with people with a symbiotic relationship. And in that, actually, there are a lot of technical issues to tackle. For example, how do you really give them the nutrients, the habitat conditions they need to survive? And I think there is no strict divide between the technical and the biological, because they are helping with each other. And for example, in this case, when you want to prolong their life, you definitely need a lot of technical background and technical knowledge to do that. And also on the other side, I think when you think about the digital world, digital technologies, they can definitely augment the biological world. For example, to augment the biological materials with more sensibility and with more feedback to people. And I think in that way, with these kind of interactions, people will get to know more about the habitat, how we cohabitat with them. As Jan mentioned, I think it's a very beautiful concept. And I think in that way, I think that technical things should definitely be used for the biological world, instead saying that they're totally separate or we should overcome a kind of barrier. I don't think there's this a strict boundary. Yeah.
That was beautiful, Jiwei. Thank you very much. Anybody care to take the baton from Jiwei and perhaps elaborate from your perspective on the thoughts?
Well, to me, I would say, Mike, in general, as Jiwei pointed out, there is no strict separation between the technical and biological cycle. In a way, if we take, technical cycle, even in circular economy, as only recycling, that is a strategy that, of course, could bring a lot of value still, like compared to normal use of materials. But moving on to that, it's actually really starting from, maybe waste materials or low value residues or low value materials, upcycling them, making them really beautiful products, and durable products, because otherwise, if they are just, one-time use products, then we fall into again the same spin-off circles that we could continue consuming and continue using a lot of materials. So, but as long as they live, as nature does, is in its own strategies, I think as long as they live, these products should have a very technical performance. I don't know if that's also something. So the technical cycle comes in when you have to, sustain this life of the product, and that's exactly what nature does, because nature starts from using materials, but then in the lifetime, it creates these amazing structures that really can withstand, I don't know, like hurricanes, even, if you think of trees. And then it in the decay phase, of course, it comes back to nature and it closes the loop. So that is, I think, something we need to apply to products of everyday use. And
and this is basically a part of nature that doesn't exist out there, but this is the way that we as human beings actually work as well. There is a beginning and then there's an end, and as long as we have a life after the end, then we keep things flowing. If there is no life after the end, then this is really where our problems are. Not to focus too much on the insect world, is really taken on the chin. We have a question from Maria Linda Vieticht, who was asking, if there is no boundary, how should she imagine the material flows at the end of the life cycle? Anybody care to take a stab at that one?
I mean, in the circular economy, there are we're going away from this linear model that at the end materials are waste, but that materials can go up to another higher level through recycling, remanufacturing, reuse, which are mostly the terms we use for the technical cycle. And of course, in the natural cycle, it's about decomposting. And so the nutrients that are in the material, they go back into nature, which then again the ground to grow new materials. So going back to the earlier question, I think it's just important to keep natural and biological based materials separate, but it doesn't mean that you cannot use technical processes when you process natural materials, and so we can bring those two together.
Any other feedback from you, Jiwei, Serena?
Well, if I understand well the question, but I'm not sure. Sorry for that. But I guess is she imagining maybe if how can she imagine the material flows at the end of the life cycle, in the sense that if they should be recollected, even more on a pragmatic level. And I believe that is an important topic, because, for example, in our flooring system at Mogu, we propose that our core is biodegradable, 100% biodegradable, but the top layer is actually recyclable. So how do we, empower then our customers, for example, to exploit, like, even if we design it perfectly, the end of the life cycle is an essential point. So as Mogu, what we plan to do is to have a plan of recollection, and then we can reuse it in future products. And a lot of companies, other companies, even big ones in the flooring system, are starting to have these programs of, recollection. So there is a kind of an idea of a material flow at the end of the life cycle, I guess.
Yeah, certainly if we're looking at from some of the terminology used by Cradle to Cradle, they refer to the goal being everything is a nutrient. So with that, there is no boundary because in essence, it helps feeds the cycle. And I think that directly relates to that, Jan, of what you were saying in keeping these elements somewhat separate, which I think is also very important. There is another question, a little bit longer statement here, coming from Balish Hiketi. Maybe just getting to the crux of the matter. He raises the question, so that people do not want to build something durable for themselves for the next generation, which is part of the problem. We're looking for short-term gains, so to speak. And certainly in the way that we have construction today, looking at it from a mindset perspective, I'm kind of interpreting the comment myself, in ensuring that it's built to last, so to speak. Any thoughts on that one? I know that was a mouthful.
Well, if I may, I guess I think it is a little bit what we have been talking before. Let's say with really ensuring that during the lifetime the product really works perfectly, and it has a durable life and it can sustain a durable life in like a durable buildings, and it can performances should be maintained, but the start and the end of the life cycle should be designed differently and planned for that. So it's a little bit coming from nature strategy. Like a tree really starts from like the soil, then it becomes this amazing structure that can withstand hurricanes, and then it falls down and it comes back to the soil. So more or less, I guess that is it, to me at least.
Yeah, I agree. I think these materials have to perform the way they have to perform for a certain application and for a certain lifetime or service life. I think it's just about really thinking, how long do things have to last? When I say I have a desire for things to last, there is maybe more a desire to feel at home somewhere and to feel safe and secure, which is, and design have to address it. But then really, does it mean that a certain component has to last 100 years? I don't think so. So it's just also having that pragmatic approach to see what has to last how long, and then what's the best solution for it. And if something has to last for 600 years and withstand the biggest storms, then we need to design a timber structure or maybe a concrete foundation that way. But if you look at our more transitioned life of where we do fit out and how we live and furniture things, then things are very different.
Yeah,
And I think so please, Jiwei, please.
To add one thing, I think it's also important for people who buy who buy things to really know how to care for things and care for the materials, to cherish what's unique about this material that you cannot easily buy a substitute for it, because you have your like experience with it, you have your habit with it, and you know it, and you really care about the material. You want it to last. There is emotional bonding between you and the material. It's not something you can always buy new things to replace.
Which leads me to the corollary from that question, that being the elephant in the room that we haven't talked about so far, and that is the whole question of economics with the subject. One is understanding the value, directly relating to that of what you were saying. And then the question is, how do we actually go ahead and try to show the added value from an economic model? And I'm not necessarily referring to staying with the existing economic model, coming up with something new and improved. How can we bring the concept of biomaterials together with this idea of current economics, or our desired economics, let's put it that way?
Maybe I can make a start on that one.
Please feel free.
We discussed that the sort of bioeconomy is part of the circular economic system, which decouples growth from, let's say, from a resource consumption. And within that concept, there are lots of new business models and ways to create value, and that way also to create a prospering industry. And just the example, when we talk about bio-based materials, when we look at agricultural feedstock waste materials, using those as a way to make materials of value, that's obviously an economic benefit, and there are new business models around it of making these materials, but maybe leasing these materials, collecting these materials, sharing these materials. So I think it will help economy to prosper. The thing maybe that's a thing for discussion is whether we will see that more decentralized, so lots of small players benefiting, or we then again will see maybe a conglomerate of big companies of driving and benefiting. Maybe more a question for Serena, how you see that? How is the ecosystem evolving, and how much is it in hands of a few, and how much you see that scaling up really broadly?
Well, that is a tough question, actually. I would say it's a little bit of the mix at the moment, honestly. Like, there are big companies that are really starting to push for a change, and especially in the flooring market, I can really think of very virtuous examples. Then the extent of that, the really virtuosity, and not just greenwashing is a little bit uncertain. You have to really go behind the curtain and behind the backstage and see whether it is a real effort to. But I can think of a few examples, and there are a lot of really courageous small companies trying to make a difference, and of course one is represented by us, but there are a lot of, like Mogu, there are a lot of really bottom-up companies, small companies that are trying to make a difference with those new biomaterials. And we at Mogu in general, we have been lucky to have been really highly supported by the European Union, I must say that. Otherwise, honestly, like it would have been a little bit more challenging and difficult to support the start of this adventure. At the moment, instead, like, we are creating values from the market and the products we sell in general. So our plan is that. I would say when it comes to, I really like Prashant's comment during his interview, actually, in which he said it took 7 years to actually get a break from from the market, and that it takes a lot of patience to actually to build up a real economy based on biomaterials. And I could really it's a constant struggle. It's a daily care in which you build up a real economy. But if you have a mission and a vision that is really clear, at the end, it's really it's really the benefit is really high what you get. But it takes patience, and really a lot of care from a small company to build up and really achieve a.
You dropped off around the middle because I thought that was interesting, especially looking at it from the perspective of where we are very blessed here in Europe or in North America, because we don't have to really worry about resources. Even if we are not able to go ahead and turn things around, you alluded to it, Serena, we're able to come up, we can tap into money either locally or perhaps even coming from Brussels. Whereas I don't think that we have that same possibility within the emerging markets to go ahead and say, well, I'll just go ahead and rely on the government to go ahead and support us. So I think that's extremely important point to realize. And Jan, thank you very much for bringing the company. I always think it's very important that we're talking about something that's live. We're talking about something that's personal, and I think that is a great segue into a question that was posed to me earlier. And this is especially with regards to the alignment here. We have two that are more or less starting in their career. Jiwei, you're perhaps halfway there, or maybe a little bit more than 50% there. And where individuals see the potential of moving into this concept of biomaterials. Serena and Jan, you have been involved in the subject for a longer period of time. Is there any advice you might be able to give to the other two members of our panel today of where they should actually go ahead and start to make more of a deeper dive into the subject, especially with the intention of making this a career, which is really what you two have done. And I think from that perspective, I see you both as being role models. Any advice you might be able to give the others here in the panel to some tips of how they can go ahead and move their career?
Mike, I actually feel it's the other way around. When I see this generation coming, I think there is so much we can learn by the openness to collaborate and to try and test things and fail fast and try again and look at the right constellations. I think, you know, it's in terms of mindset and energy and the agility, which is so important to innovate and to collaborate. I see it the other way around, that
Wow.
that my generation can learn from you guys.
Serena, can you top that one from Jan?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not sure if I can be considered a role model, because in the end, I mean, yeah, it has been 10 years that I work on, but not only on biomaterials. So thanks for that. But if I may, for me, it's really what it is the most satisfying in this business is really, first of all, the mission, of course, like to bring nature back into everyday's life. Myself as a little girl, I was, going in the woods and finding, I love nature, and I love how I feel in nature. So I think if we could get back a little bit of that feeling in our offices, in our everyday life. So having a really clear vision and really clear mission. And then an advice would be to really go into the real products, and to really, that was really, that made a difference for me. Coming also from academic research, so really starting to understand that even in academic research, you can still go out in the real and try to understand what would make these biomaterials usable, in general, and really populating our everyday life. So that is, just really trying to have a very applied kind of approach to research. That's also a very personal, actually, suggestion.
Well, and Serena, you don't need to be modest, because anybody who comes up with a saying "radical by nature" has really has a bit of chutzpah, if you ask me. Perhaps maybe we can pose that question. Let's turn the question, the approach around, and ask Jiwei and Xiana what their thoughts are with regards to what hopes and maybe some of the struggles that they have in getting involved in this type of career.
In the beginning of my research.
Oh, please go ahead, Jiwei.
You start. Sorry.
Thank you. So in the beginning of my research, I had this struggle. Actually, I was thinking about domestication as a general term. We've been domesticated crops and some animals as pets, and now I'm researching on another kind of probably domestication of living organisms. And is that correct, or is that ethically fine? I had this struggle, and also a struggle with who is going to control, and if there is a kind of a business with any kind of living material, is it fine that we say, although we are collaborating with the living organisms, is it fine that we really exploit them? So it's still, I'm still trying to figure out, and probably I think in my future research I will make the interaction more unpredictable. Humans or human actors do not have complete control over something, but there are surprises in the use, and they are kind of evolving together to some stage in the future. So that's probably, my confusion, my struggle, and also probably my vision for the future research.
Well, I'm blown away. What a vision. Thank you very much for sharing that, Joy. Jana, your thoughts on it?
Well, as you guys know, I'm not that long in the topic, but since I started reading and informing myself about it, especially in terms of the state of climate change we are in at the moment, I could not look away anymore. So it really completely dragged me into this issue, and I felt like I could not close my laptop anymore. I could not close my books anymore. And basically what I wanted to do is to share all the information I gained with everybody around me. And what I felt at the beginning was curiosity at first, yes, of course, but also a little bit of distance from a lot of people. I felt a lot of distance because I feel like my generation has a split view. Yes, we might get more aware of the current state the world is in today. I mean, we're in the middle of the 6th mass extinction, and actually almost nobody that I know really knows, and really we might understand, but we're not able to, or what we're lacking is the action. And I feel like there's a split view of where we're going to go. Is it going to be the environmentally friendly way, the right way in my eyes? Because there's only one way in my eyes. Or is it going to be the profit-driven way? And I feel like there's a huge misconception, because actually we can unite those ways. And most people think it's not possible. So for me, the biggest, let's say, struggle exploring this issue further is, or the biggest struggle I have is, how am I going to change hearts and mindsets of people, and how I can, what's the best way for me to drive change, or where's this, because I always try to think big, but I think with this issue, it's the small things that make a difference. And I'm so excited what's going to get thrown on my way, because I'm a big believer in karma and stuff like that. So I feel like the connections and to the environment and to other people, and I feel like just following my heart will bring me on the right path. But yeah, I'm very excited to also for the failures and all the struggles, because like Jan mentioned earlier, we need those struggles, we need those failures to drive change. And yeah, that's my statement on that.
Okay, thank you very much, Jana. Perhaps any closing questions? We've already gone 10 minutes past, so I appreciate everybody who stuck around with us. Any closing comments they'd like to have from Jan, Serena, Jiwei? Not all at once. Serena, step up to the stage.
Well, no, I would like to thank you, Mike. I think it was a very inspiring conversation on, in general, how new materials can be applied in the building industry, in the construction industry, and it sparkled some very good points in general.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, cool. Jiwei, Jan, any closing comments you'd like to make?
I think, yeah, I just want to thank you all. And it's very inspiring, especially hearing from different perspectives other than my own, because I think I'm like really focused, I'm more focused than like you are from the industry. You have a lot of projects with real application, and also like a scaling up possibility. I think it's very, very, I learned quite a lot and took notes, and like it's a lot to digest later on. And thank you all for that.
And we promise to share the information, of course, with everybody else. Jan, your thoughts?
Maybe that for these materials and developing another approach is to have these conversations across disciplines and between designers and scientists, and to marry science back into design. We need, obviously, biologists to tell us and that we can learn from them, and that we can then integrate it. So yeah, just a call, I think, for more science-based research